Science fiction, the great teacher, the great inspiration. It helps us see the endless possibilities of life. So let's be inspired together.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
Sending out interceptors. We have taken them completely by surprise.
Hey everybody, it's the Commodore. How's everybody doing? Well, raining today. Pretty heavy too, some thunder. But I'm still out on the road here. And I just got done having dinner here, so now I gotta go someplace else here. But yeah, it was humid yesterday, and it wasn't like really sunny, but it was humid, so you knew there was going to be rain today. And sure enough, rain. So I watched Star Trek Strange New Worlds episode 4 last night. I know it comes on Thursdays, but I like to watch it on Fridays. I don't know, just because when I was a kid and I grew up, Friday nights TV shows were always good to watch, and I kind of got into the habit, of having good shows to watch on Friday night. So I wait till the next day and I just kind of treat myself to watching something good on Friday night, and that's been my habit ever since. So I watched it last night. It was a pretty good episode. I liked the story. It was a very good story. It felt like they were trying to introduce the feel of being like in a submarine, in the episode, which never seems to go wrong when they do a science fiction program or a battle scene or something like that, and they make it feel like something like out of World War II or something. It never seems to, it seems like it works. I mean, that's kind of what they did with Star Trek 2, when they were fighting in the nebula. Everybody's trying to see each other and stuff, so it was sort of like, fighting in the clouds or something, or you know what I'm saying? So it's when they make these battles that aren't just like straight, fighting toe to toe, and it's sort of like each side has got a disadvantage or something, and they're trying to take advantage of the disadvantage. That makes for a great, combat kind of story, and it also tests the mettle of the crew, because waiting for something to happen while you're fighting, is always a ulcer in your stomach. I think of that episode, what was it, where the people on the Defiant were trying to rescue that civilian ship, and the Dominion show up, and they flew themselves down into a gas giant or something, and they were kind of having the same problem that the Enterprise was having last night with the Gorn, except there was no black hole. But again, it was a situation where they're trying to find their target, and it's not easy, and everybody's being tested to the limit here on how they to win. So this episode was kind of like that. Plus, it was a nice, interesting thing, because I played a lot of Star Trek video games in my time, and one of the better ones that they have called Starfleet Command is they have locations where you can have combats, and because just being in open space is never really like that. I mean it's kind of like Star Wars in a way, open space fighting, but when you pick a location like the rings of a planet, or an asteroid field, or a nebula, or a gas giant, then what you think about combat gets questioned, because then you got to think of all the variables that could go wrong in a situation like that. That it's not so predictable, because in a straight outer space fight, the person with the most guns usually wins, right? Unless the other one's really clever. But in a situation where you put both opponents in a rather unusual situation where they're in a certain location, the advantages are kind of diminished, and the plane is level, which is what Captain Pike was trying to do. Was he figured if we can fight this out in there, the odds would be more in our favor. So, it was good, that because you get to see that Pike, he's no slouch when it comes to combat, even though they didn't know much about the Gorn at the time. And by the way, those Gorn ships, they look like shit. They look like bonsai trees floating around in space. Okay, those things, I'm sorry. I mean, I know they wanted to make it look, interesting and all that, but, I grew up in the 80s with Starfleet, the role-playing game, where they have their ships and all that, role-playing game. And they had game pieces for the Gorn ships in that game. Okay, they were tiny little things made out of pewter, I guess is what they were, and you could either paint them or just leave them. And I had some Gorn ships, and the Gorn ships that I had, okay, for that game, they look like big bulky shuttlecraft. Okay, they don't look aerodynamic. They're kind of just fat, and slow, and their weapons are incredibly strong. And when they started doing the video games on PC games, they transferred that style over to that. So the Gorn ships, they took some of those Gorn ships from the role-playing game and they put them on the PC game. So then you get to see how this thing really moves and all that. And so those ships were badass in the game, okay? They weren't like really fast, but they had plasma torpedoes and a lot of them, okay? So they could do a great deal of damage, but they weren't quick, so they had to have complete coverage around their ships. So these ships were basically flying cannons, And that made sense to me because the Gorns themselves don't rely on speed to win their fights. They rely on brute force, the strength of what they, their muscle, their strength, what they can do. Okay, so you can't see how a race like that would build something that's slick and fast and skinny and all that. It doesn't match the race, you know what I'm saying? I kind of like the idea of races building their starships to kind of reflect who they are, to give you that sort of insight into what kind of species they are. This thing that they made last night for the Gorn ships, I was like, what? I said, this looks like a flying bonsai tree. I said, it just doesn't make any sense. Where's the front? Where's the back? Where's the top? Where's the bottom? And how the hell do they know where they're going in these things? I'm sorry, but that didn't make any sense. Now, the little ships made a little more sense, but that big one, I was like, no, I'm sorry. I ain't buying that. I don't know why they decided to go that route, because if you look at the remastered TOS, they put a Gorn ship in there where it just used to be a dot, if you remember. And the Gorn ship they made in there was, I had a problem with that one too. To me, that looked too small, too weak. to be a Gorn ship, okay? But still, it was a ship that looked like it belonged in the Star Trek universe, okay? It had pylons and it had, you know, nacelles and shit like that. You know, it's like most of the alien races on Star Trek have. All their ships have sort of the basic components like the Enterprise has, just shaped differently, okay? None of the Gorn ships in that episode last night had anything that resembled any of those kind of styles or anything like that, okay? I was hoping, you know, maybe they would show something that looked like maybe one of the ships from the role-playing game from the 80s. I mean, there was some good ships in there. I mean, they easily could have grabbed one of them and used that, okay? But, yeah, I mean, why did they not go to that and look at what they made there and just try and, you know, build on that from a ground? Why did they start from scratch and make a whole other kind of looking spaceship that really doesn't seem to belong in Star Trek canon? Okay, it might look good for like Babylon 5 or you know, one of these other science fiction shows, okay, but as far as Star Trek goes, no, it doesn't fit into the Star Trek realm. I mean, unless it has something, you know, completely unique about it, where a race that we've never seen in any series, Star Trek series, that would be a little more acceptable. But since we kind of know the Gorn, we know what they are, what they look like and everything, and we know kind of what their ships kind of look like, and this didn't match any of that. It was like a whole different race. So no, I didn't like it. I mean, they looked way too complicated and to really be understood. And I think they were maybe they were just showing off or something to what we can make here for Star Trek or something. I don't know. I really don't know. But I wish they would have just, you know, gone back to what's already been made for Gorn ships and just said, okay, let's take this and let's see if we can't, you know, spice it up some, you know, change it a little bit here and there, but it'll essentially kind of look like that. I wouldn't have had a problem with that. Okay, but none of those Gorn ships really seemed to look. In fact, the first thing I thought, but was already quickly changed my mind, was maybe they were Tholian ships or something, the smaller ones anyway. But then I said, no. The Tholian ships look more like diamonds. They don't look like that. So I said, no, that can't be a diamond. But then they said Gorn. It's like Gorn ships, you know, Christ. So I was like really kind of disappointed that they made these ships look so weak and flimsy, you know, because you'd think Gorn ships would be like very strong. Because from what's been written about the Gorn homeworld is that their homeworld sits in sort of a asteroid belt, okay, and that their homeworld is constantly impacted by rocks all the time and stuff, and so, you know, their hulls have to be thick and stuff in order to fly around in their own star system, and that's why the ships are so big and bulky, at least in the role-playing game, because they put a lot of work in the Star Trek role-playing game back in the 80s. I mean, they used to make books and books and books to back up the stuff they were doing. I still got a lot of that stuff today. I mean, it's really worth, if you ever can get your hands on some of those things at a yard sale or some you know, store somewhere that's got retro things. If you see anything from the role-playing game, you should grab it because it's really interesting reads. But they showed, you know, they talk about why the Gorns are the way they were, how the Romulans are the way they are, and you know what I'm saying? They give you a lot of insight, which is what a lot of us Star Trek fans in my age, you know, grew up with, and why we feel like we shouldn't reject all that stuff that was written. It's a lot of literature that goes in with Star Trek, and they ought to really introduce a lot of that in there whenever they can, you know. And they never really did, even back in the 80s, and when they had TNG and Deep Space Nine and Voyager. They never really introduced much of FASA's Star Trek role-playing material. They just kind of, you know, ignored it for the most part. But it's really worth not ignoring, because I think it gives you a perception of things more than the TV show can give you. Okay, role-playing games give you some kind of a idea of how things work, and they really thought out a lot about the role-playing game for Star Trek, on how things function in ships, and what they do. So anyway, yeah, that was one of the big things I kind of just didn't like about the episode, was the odd redesign of a Gorn ship in there, which is probably why nobody recognized the one that attacked the planet there, the library, whatever, in Arena, okay, because it didn't look like any Gorn ship they ever saw before. So they just kind of like felt like, well, this can't be, them, and I'm thinking, well, that's probably why, they say, hey, this doesn't look like a Gorn ship. The last time we saw one of them, they looked like a flying, bonsai tree. So, so, maybe that's why they probably designed it the way they did, was they wanted it to, be able to use something in order to kind of trip up canon in a way and say, well, they didn't realize who attacked them, because the ship they used in that episode didn't look anything like these, okay? But I'm thinking, well, why would they change such a engineering design philosophy, practically in just, a few years, and build something that's completely different? I mean, why would they go through that? Even Starfleet doesn't do that shit. It takes them years and years just to make a modification to like a Constitution class starship, but it still looks like a Constitution class, even though it's been sleeked out, and everything. No, they wouldn't go that far. So anyway, okay, let's go to commercial break.
If you could do just one simple thing to protect the people you love from getting sick, would you? If we all wear masks while we're in public, we can keep our families safe from the coronavirus. You've already made a lot of sacrifices, but this one is easy, and it will make a difference. It doesn't matter where you live or who you voted for. If you wear a mask, you will help save lives.
takes, and you sure can't pick 'em. It's Kellogg's cornflakes. Hey kid, well you're the best of the bunch, and you sure can't pick 'em. It's that big cornflakes crunch. Hey kid, you really know what you like, and you sure can't pick 'em. Sure can't pick 'em. It's cornflakes. All right.
Be a part of the entertainment value of a lifetime.
I loved it.
It was the best performance I've seen in a lifetime.
I loved the show. I liked it very much. He's a very entertaining man. It's well worth the money.
Now appearing in Charlottetown, coming to Halifax November 6th to the 18th, and St. John November 20th through the 26th.
All right, everybody. Welcome. Okay. The other show I caught up on here last night after I was done watching Star Trek was Star Wars Kenobi, Obi-Wan Kenobi. I missed 2 episodes of that, so I had 2 episodes to watch. The first 2 episodes. I have to say it was pretty good because, you know, they filled in some plot holes, I think you could say, between the Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. Okay, this story takes place 10 years after Episode 3. Okay, so Kenobi's been on Tatooine for the last 10 years, basically, you know, etching out a living, you know, and keeping his eye on Luke as he's growing up. Luke is about 10 years old now, so, and, you know, he's trying to keep a low profile because if you've been watching any of the Star Wars cartoons that they've been making, the animated stories, you know that the galaxy is full of Inquisitors, and the Inquisitors go around trying to find any surviving Jedi and killing them, you know, or eliminating them. So he's down on the planet, Obi-Wan, and trying to keep a low profile because, you know, if he uses the Force, then it's like sending up a flare to any Force user. They can feel that or sense that someone's using it, and it'll help them to isolate where you are. So, you know, you got 3 Inquisitors that pay a visit here on Tatooine, which causes a bit of a ruckus there because one of those Inquisitors has an axe to grind with Ben Kenobi, and she's been looking for him since the fall of the Jedi. Okay, my guess is that she was a pupil of Kenobi's or something, because she was a Jedi herself, but she turned to the dark side to work for Vader, as it were, because, you know, like, I mean, she says right in there, you know, that Lord Vader, and that she's okay. So Inquisitors work for the Emperor through Darth Vader, who's got them going around looking for any Jedi. But she's got a hunch that Obi-Wan Kenobi's still alive, so she's really going out there trying to find him. Okay. And at the same time, we get to visit Leia as a little girl at 10 years old, on her, you know, as she's living on Alderaan. And they bring back Bail Organa, who we saw in the movies. He comes back to play the father role, which was nice that they maintained the continuity there, you know. And, you know, we get to see a bit of her personality kind of taking shape, because the Leia we know, she's got to kind of form as a little girl. So she's impulsive and mouthy a little bit, and she's insightful, and she gives her parents a little bit of a hard time because she's rebellious, and we find that Luke is kind of that way too. And they get that from, obviously they get that from Anakin, because Anakin was the same way. So these two kids are going to mirror him in that fashion. So anyway, somebody or whatever, whoever, captures the little girl, Princess Leia, and now Bail Organa reaches out to Obi-Wan Kenobi on Tatooine and asks for his help, and Obi-Wan is like, no, you don't want to send me. I haven't used the Force in 10 years. That's, you know, I can't do it anymore. I'm not the man I was, you know. And Bail's like, well, you're the only one I can trust, you know. So he actually, you know, Obi-Wan turns him down. So Bail flies out to Tatooine and confronts him face to face and pleads with him to do something. And so Obi-Wan reluctantly agrees, and he goes and digs up his old lightsaber, which he buried in the sand somewhere next to Anakin's lightsaber, and he decides he's going to go save Princess Leia. Okay, of course that opens the door. You know, now he tries not to use the Force as much as he can, but then, you know, things happen, and he has to use it. And while he's there, those same three Inquisitors are following him around, you know, kind of following his footsteps, as it were, but they don't really know where he is. Okay, they just know where he is. You know, not know what planet he's on, but they can't really localize him to a specific area. Okay, but they know he's somewhere on this other planet that he went to go find Leia, because that's where she was kidnapped too. So he's got to rescue her. And in the process of rescuing her, he finds out through a confrontation with one of the Inquisitors that this Lord Vader that's going around, you know, killing Jedi is actually Anakin Skywalker. And he didn't know that, because the last time he saw Anakin, he left him to die on that lava planet, assuming that, and then you just assume that he did die. I mean, you know, if it hadn't been for the Emperor, who showed up at the last second, you know, and saved him, then he probably would have died right then and there. But instead, he did what he did, and then he walked away and he left, and he just assumed in his mind that was it. You know, Anakin's dead. All those years pass, and he finds out, no, he ain't dead. He's still alive, you know. And so we see at the last shot Anakin in a bacta tank, all banged up and everything from way back when he was that last saber duel. But he's in a bacta tank, and we know he's there. So you know, we might see Vader at some point in this show. But it explains, you know, how, you know, that Obi-Wan Kenobi didn't know for quite a while that Anakin Skywalker was still kicking. You know, he's still around. They managed to keep that from him, I guess, because he just naturally assumed that he died. But for some reason, he never sensed Vader or sensed him, Anakin, otherwise. I mean, so I don't know. But since he wasn't using the Force for 10 years, that probably is the reason why he couldn't sense Anakin Skywalker, is because he shut himself off from the Force for so long. So it's pretty interesting. Like I said, it really does cover up a lot of things, you know, some question marks about, you know, how are we going to how do we explain away how Obi-Wan Kenobi doesn't know that Vader is still alive, because, you know, he assumed that he was dead. Okay, but then in A New Hope, he lies to Luke about his father because obviously he knows who his father really is. So how did he find out from episode 3 to episode 4 that Anakin survived that last saber duel? He didn't die, you know. So they had to put that in there. So now he knows. Where that story takes us from there, I don't know. That's going to be the following week. But I wish that the people who are writing these stories, like, you know, The Mandalorian, Boba Fett, the Book of Boba Fett, and Obi-Wan Kenobi were the ones behind the friggin' sequel trilogy they made, you know, because these people seem to be more dedicated to the actual source material and building on it than, you know, whoever was doing that before in those 3 films. Okay, because obviously that's what makes the story so much better here on the TV, because they're not disregarding anything like they tried to do in the sequel films. Okay, they're not trying to disregard anything or trying to focus so much on getting rid of familiar faces and stuff. They introduce new characters as they bring back the old ones, and the new characters, you know, they get to be popular in their own way. Okay, like The Mandalorian is a new character, but you know, the series, that the first season of it was really a big seller. People really loved it. So there you go. You know, and they didn't really have to shut out any of, you know, they brought Luke in there and they had Boba Fett in there. So they didn't have to close the door on any of these characters, right? But for some reason, when they did the sequel movies, it's like they wanted to try and get rid of the familiar faces. You know, kill them off as quickly as you can. You know, starting with Han. You know, they just didn't want to have too many references to the classic films. And it's like, well, you know, the fans didn't like that. That was the worst way to start off with the fans, was to do that kind of shit. Like, you know, because these fans waited for a long time to see these characters come back in some way, and they turn around and just, you know, chop them up. The hell with them, you know. And instead they introduce us to characters that are like Mary Sue's, I guess is what they call them, you know, that, you know, it was very difficult to like in the first place. So, you know, it's just, you know what I'm saying, they really bungled that up. But they're really doing a good job with the TV shows. So the team behind it, that's making these TV shows, it really deserves, you know, some appreciation here, because they are really faithfully honoring where things left off from Return of the Jedi and picking up the baton themselves and going as much as they can with it to kind of, you know, fix what is, you know, as they say. So, you know, I'm really good I'm happy that they are doing such a good job here with the TV show. So you know, and they make these episodes in movie quality, so they're not like cheap rip-off kind of things. They look like they fit right in with the movies themselves, just broken down into smaller pieces and, you know, given to you that way. So yeah, they got Ewan McGregor back for playing Obi-Wan. Some people think they didn't age him enough, but, you know, so what? The fact that they got him back to play the character was good in itself, because I'm not so sure McGregor really wanted to come back and do it again. But I guess from things I've heard, Star Wars is sort of a family thing, because he had a relative who played Wedge Antilles in the original Star Wars. He's related to that guy, and I didn't know that. So apparently, you know, Star Wars is, you know, something that he liked himself. So I guess it wasn't probably hard to get him to come back and play that character, which was good, because it, you know, adds to the continuity of things. Oh, and another part, they show on this other planet, not Tatooine, but this other planet that Obi-Wan goes to, this old clone warrior begging for money, using his old helmet from just to show you what happened to the Clone Warriors, that all those clones that they made. Obviously, they were simply retired and thrown to the winds, as it were, and they don't need them anymore. And Obi-Wan gives him some change and throws it in his helmet. But I guess he had a bit of a mixed feeling, because those clones were the ones that slaughtered all the Jedi, and now there's a clone sitting on the street begging for money. And of course, the guy that they use is playing the clone is obviously the same guy that plays Boba Fett, because Boba Fett was, or his father rather, Jango Fett, was the one that they patterned all the clones after. So, so this guy, this actor here, he seems, you know, always, he gets these opportunities to kind of appear in different things, but different characters, but they can explain it because, you know, this character is a clone of a clone of a clone, you know, so he can always come back. So here he is on this other planet, and like I said, he's playing a retired old Republic clone warrior, and he's not working or anything, and he's just, you know, he's hungry and he's begging for food, and that's what becomes of the Clone Warriors, is they're just simply cast out, and they replace them with the stormtroopers that we know from A New Hope, you know. So apparently, you know, they don't do cloning anymore, or at least not in the same way they did before. They have different people under those helmets. So the cloning, you know, which kind of says, you know, it would probably have been easier if they'd have just kept cloning, because now they got to go out and recruit people to join the Empire, and they got to train them from scratch. Well, the clones, they didn't have to go, they recruit them. All they had to do was make them, right? And then they rapidly grow them, so that way they can start training right off, okay? And, you know, you can manufacture an army a whole lot quicker that way than going out and recruiting. So I don't understand why the Emperor decided to get rid of the clones, unless there was something wrong with them that, you know, like they had to do. I don't know. But it seemed to me like it was a stupid thing to do, because if the Emperor's idea of controlling the galaxy was to come to fruition, he was going to need a massive, massive army in order to occupy it. So that means not only would he have to be using the cloning facilities, but he'd also be recruiting people too as well. I mean, that's where Han Solo began in that movie Solo. He started off as a soldier for the Empire, and then he just quit. You know, he didn't like it. But yeah, I mean, they were going around the galaxy just picking up people and putting them into the uniform. So I'm thinking, well, that's a dumb thing for the Emperor to do, because he needed to have a big army in order to control the galaxy the way he wanted it done. You know, not only did he have to have a lot of ships and everything and fighters, but you got to have people flying in these things, okay? And you can't get away with that with just, you know, 1 billion or 2 billion people in an army. You're going to have a huge army and constant vigilance with equipment everywhere in order to do it. So, like I said, that's one of the things about the Star Wars story that I don't understand, is why the Emperor felt that he could do better with recruiting people for his army than to just simply continue cloning them. He already had an existing army with the Republic. He simply could have just converted them over to the Empire, and they would have still been there. So, you know, he had an army to begin with, but he was phasing them out as he was replacing them with regular people, you know. So I don't know, but anyway, that's it for today, everybody, and I hope to see you again soon. So please subscribe and comment, and keep your ears open for your local COVID-19 news, and stay safe out there, everybody. Take care.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We are not sending out interceptors. We have taken them completely by surprise.
because I think that the tradition of an engineer is a Scot. You know, because all the great motor ships and the steamships of the world were built in the Clyde.